In this quick concept video, I'm going to talk about ecological units. Hi folks, I'm Taran. I'm a PhD candidate in ecology, and I'm here to help you make connections between environmental science and environmental issues that you actually care about. This video is going to be a very short introduction to the idea of ecological units, principally the population, the community, and the ecosystem that I'm going to make other short introductory videos about so that you can start thinking more clearly about ecology and environmental science. Really briefly, a population is a group of organisms of one species. A community is a group of organisms with two or more, right? Many species interacting. And an ecosystem is many individuals of many species interacting together with their non-living environment, like the air and the water and the soil. So the natural world is this enormous tapestry of living and unliving forces and entities interacting, exchanging material and energy and information. And we can't handle all of that diversity and complexity. And so when we're trying to do science on ecosystems and understand how the living world works, we place artificial boundaries around parts of these ecosystems so that we can isolate and study them and understand at least how these small parts work together. So if we want to talk about the community of a forest, there is no hard boundary to what the forest is that we can walk up and touch. And it can be compelling sometimes to say something like, oh, it's at the tree line. But very rarely in nature is there, a single tree line that is we can walk up to and touch, and it's a clearly defined boundary. It doesn't really work like that, because even if you say that, say, okay, the boundary is at the tree line, because we're talking about a community and not just a population of trees, the songbirds that live in that forest travel back and forth over both sides of this line, of the tree line, right? The songbirds move, the insects move, the deer will move back and forth. And it's some form of that dynamic for any ecosystem you could be curious about, even ones that seem like they would have strict boundaries that we could use to understand, right? Like an island in the middle of the Pacific. We can say, okay, well, animals and plants are pretty limited to this island. There's nowhere to go. And while that does make the act of doing science and thinking about these ecosystems easier, the boundaries are still not concrete in a touchable way. It's still an abstraction to say that the edge of this island is the boundary of the community, because you have seabirds traveling back and forth. You have animals washing up on shore. You have predators like hunting in the shallows and in tide pools and interacting with this whole other part of the living world in the marine ecosystem that touches and interlaces with the ecosystem of the island. These ecological units, populations, community, and ecosystems, these aren't real concrete touchable things. These are names we give to patterns in the living and non-living world to help give us handholds, right? Our minds are limited. The complexity is almost infinite. And so these abstractions help us get a grip and help us understand the living world in ways that would be very difficult to do if we didn't have these tools for, separating out a little chunk so that we can think clearly about it and not go mad. It's also worth mentioning that any researcher studying populations, communities, ecosystems, and most researchers will be working at one of those levels or something closely related to it, will be using a more precise or slightly different definition than the one that I've provided here. But I think for a very short introduction to the idea of these ecological units, this should get us started. If you have any questions, think that I missed something important, leave it down in the comments, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.